I want to take his name or her name. I think Abhinav. Abhinav is somebody.
Abhinav is there, sir.
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. All right, Abhinav.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am.
Yeah. We'll start, Abhinav.
Yes, sir. Is it visible now?
Yeah, it's visible to me. I hope it's visible to everybody. Just check it if it's rolling.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't create a problem later. I've got my PPTs on my computer screen right here. So that's not a problem. Yeah. We'll start. You can go to the next slide.
Is it rolling, sir?
Yeah, I couldn't see it rolling right now.
Only the first
agenda?
slide is visible.
No, it's not visible. The agenda part is not visible. I think, have you put it on the change? You can click it if it's not happening through the F5 key. You can click one by one slides. That's also not a problem for me.
The slides are rolling, sir. Are you able to see it?
No. It's not rolling for me.
Abhinav, instead of doing a slideshow, just click on the individual slides.
Yeah,
maybe.
just click on the individual slides.
Sure.
That's not a problem at all.
Sure.
It's for everybody else. I have to make them so I have it on my computer screen so that people don't have a problem.
So should I share it on the WhatsApp group so that people can see it parallelly?
Yeah, you can if you want to. There's no problem.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you can.
Is it rolling now, sir?
Yeah, it's rolling now. Can you try it once more?
Yes, sir. So it's now showing agenda. Now I've moved on to evolution of play, game, and sport.
Perfect.
Now we can see.
Yeah. So just go on the agenda, Abhinav. We'll start from the agenda.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Sorry about the glitch, everybody who is there, and for this delay. It's absolutely fine. It happens. It's new age. So as I mentioned before, at the introduction, these are the 5-6 things that we are going to discuss today. To understand sports law, to understand how sports law functions in the national or the international domain, it's essential to understand how this concept of sport came in. And to understand how the concept of sport came in, it's essential to understand 2 other concepts, which are the genesis of sports, which is the evolution of play and the evolution of game. So that's what we are going to discuss initially. We're going to go into then, into the whole aspect of how these modern sports international bodies came. And we're going to discuss 4 international bodies. First, it's going to be the International Olympic Committee. Then we're going to talk a little about the United Nations and how they are associated with sports. Then we are going to go into how the Interpol functions. And then we are going to go into the Code of Arbitration for Sports, which is actually the legal body that takes care of the international domain of sports law. All of this is going to be very brief. Our major focus is on career prospects and just to understand the nitty-gritties of it. So all these 4 or 5, especially CAST, we are not going to go deep into it. I'm just going to give you an introduction of how all of this functions. Then we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts one should keep in mind in the initial years of law school when you're thinking of sports law as a career. So that's going to be very imperative, as essential for everybody who's sitting and taking this webinar. We're going to talk about career and scope and how one can do, what are the law firms nationally and internationally, specifically nationally. Is it only about the law firms, or can we go to these sports federations, associations? Can we have an in-house counsel? So we're going to discuss about that. And finally, we're going to talk about the master's program and what one can do. Any question that one has, please feel free to put in the chat box, or if I don't see it, you can send it to the moderators of this session, and please feel free to ask that question. Abhinav, we'll go to the first slide, to the next slide. Sorry. Yeah. So as I said, it's important to understand play, game, and sport. And to understand sport and game, it's important to first understand play. And to understand play, I couldn't think of a better person to explain the whole concept, and that person is Johan Huizinga. He was from the University of Leiden in Netherlands, and he wrote this book called Homo Ludens. So the whole concept of Homo Ludens is that Homo sapiens are human beings and he gave other concepts about what human beings can do. And one of the most essential aspect of Homo sapiens was Homo ludens, and Homo ludens means man as a player. And now when we talk about man as a player, he is not speaking, Johann Huizinga was not speaking about man as a football player or cricket player. He's saying that all of this concept of play, this whole aspect of play is inside a person's mind. And I'll give you a small example which everybody can connect with. At least people from my generation can. When we were young, when we were like 3 years old or 4 years old or 5 years old, there was this game that we used to play called Ghar Ghar, right? Or hide and seek or Chor Police. And what happens in all of these games? In these games, like for example, in Ghar Ghar, when you want to play Ghar Ghar, what happens in Ghar Ghar is that, inside your head, you consider yourself to be a family. There will be somebody who's playing, who's the mother, who's the father, somebody who's a kid, a son or a daughter. And then somebody's going to go and cook, somebody's going to make food for somebody. There are marriages that are happening in this whole, and it's all inside your head. So you create all of these things inside your head. So he said Homo ludens is a concept where man creates everything inside the head. And play, the concept of play is internal. It's inside your head. It has nothing to do with physicality. And he then connected, play with war. He connected it with politics, so on and so forth. You can find an English translation of this book on Google. If you can't find it, I'll send it to you. I have an English translation of it. You can read about it. The book is a little complex, but one thing that you have to understand, the basics of this book is that it introduced the concept of play. It said that play is a mental program. It has nothing to do with physicality. And when you understand this concept of play, the next thing that one has to understand is the concept of game. Abhinav will go to the next slide. Okay. Yeah. And to understand this whole concept of game, the best person to read about all of this is a very famous French professor called Roger Caillois. He's a Frenchman, so his pronunciation of this surname is Caillois. And he wrote this book called Man, Play and Games. And under this book, Caillois described game, the concept of game, and he divided the whole concept of game into 4 categories. We'll go to the next slide, Abhinav, for these 4 categories, what Roger Caillois talked about. Yeah, and these are these 4 categories which Roger Caillois talked about. He said that there are 4 essentials to a game. Number 1 is agon. These are all French terms and Latin terms, which means competition. So there has to be A versus B. India versus Pakistan, somebody who follows football. Real Madrid versus Barcelona, somebody who watches NBA. It's going to be Los Angeles Lakers versus the Chicago Bulls or Sacramento Kings or whatever teams are. So he said for something to become game, there has to be a competition. There has to be A versus B, and or maybe A versus B versus C, but there has to be a competition between people. The next concept that he gave was called Ayla, which means the chance. So anybody who watched the 2019 Cricket World Cup, everybody was talking about how in the last moments, England won the match, which should be won by New Zealand. But what happened in that game? There was a shot that was hit. Somebody caught it, but his legs touched the boundary line. It was given a 6. Then Ben Stokes was running. The ball hit his bat. It went to the boundary, and the ICC rule said that it's a 4. So these are chance in a game, Or for example, somebody goes for an amazing bicycle kick in football. So everybody thought that he can never score, but he scores. So these are all game of chances. And then when this chance comes in, everybody talks about these number of issues of is chess a game or a sport? Is chess a game or a sport? And so on and so forth. But these discussions are for later. We are going to discuss it, whenever we meet next, that what these game of chances are. The next thing that Roger Caillois talked about is illness, which means vertigo. And vertigo, again, has to do something with dizziness, with mental, not mental, it's also physical, but majorly, your mental and physical wear and tear. And a very famous example for illness is Formula 1 or MotoGP, which is majorly about, all the other games are also, but in this, in Formula 1 and MotoGP, majorly your vertigo is tested. Majorly your mental capacity to sit for these 72 or 70 laps and win a race or win a game or win a trophy for your team is taken into consideration. So illness is another part. We'll stay on that slide. This last one, yeah. And last is mimicry. a lot of people ask me this question, that what has mimicry to do with sports? And it has a lot of things to do with sports. I'll give you a very small example of what mimicry has to do with game. I'm sorry, not sport. We haven't reached to that point of sport. What mimicry does in sport is that, for example, everybody knows about this very famous shot that Mahendra Singh Dhoni hits, which is called the helicopter drive. So tomorrow, if a kid in Delhi or Dehradun or Jabalpur or Bhopal or any other place in the country is playing cricket and he hits a helicopter drive for a six, everybody is going to say, he's done that like Dhoni. Or for example, if people who watch football, Cristiano Ronaldo, whenever he scores, he does this celebration which has become his signature move, which is called the destroyer. So whenever we play here in GNLU, and when I play and if I score and I do that, people are going to say that he just did it like Ronaldo, the whole celebration. And that is what mimicry is all about. It's a very very not so important concept of it, but yeah, mimicry is also a very, very essential part of it. So we understood what play is. It's all about mental capacity, what happens inside your head. Then Roger Kaiwa, who talked about what game is, he gave 4 categories of game. What constitutes a game? You have competition, you've got chance, you've got vertigo, and you've got role playing. And with this, we come to the next very essential part of it, which is called sport. We'll go to the next slide, Abhinav. And this is what evolution of sport is all about. And that is how sport came. So traditionally, whenever you read a lot of books on sports law, sports, traditionally, there are only 3 things that were considered which are essential for something to become sport. Number 1 is what we discussed in the last slide, is competition. It has to be competitive. If there is a thing that is going on, it's competitive, then it consider, and something which is happening on the field, then it has a competitive sting to it, it's a sport. Number 2, it has to be organized. There are rule books, there are associations, there are federations, and so on and so forth. So that organized, game turns out to be sport. So that's the difference between a game and a sport, majorly, that, you can play cricket in your gully, or football in your gully, or basketball or badminton in your gully. One team can have 5 players, one can have 6, some can have 7, some can have 8, but you still play it. But if you want to play cricket as a sport, there has to be 11-11. You've got your state federations, the BCCI, to take care of it. In football, you've got again 11-11. The AIFF is there. You've got your local associations of football. Your club has some rules. You've got the FIFA rules coming in, and that's how it gives an organizational structure to it. And that is what the major difference is between a game and sport. To just the bottom line of it is that game is for leisure generally, and sport is for competition. There is not a final aim, but there's an organized aim to it. A cricket match can also, game of cricket can also end when the person who owes the bat gets out and he takes the bat back to his home saying, I don't want to play anymore. Mujhe ab nahi khelna, I'm out. So, but in cricket, but if you're playing cricket at international or Ranji level or even at state level, you can't do that. If you're out, you're out. You can't just take the bat out and say the game is over, right? The third part of it is the physical activity, which is one of the most controversial part of sport. So a lot of people, because of this whole scenario, said that if there is no physical activity involved in a particular sport or a particular game, sorry, not a sport but a game, it does not, it cannot become a sport. There has to be a physical activity. So a lot of people started asking questions to them is that what about a game like chess? Is chess a sport then? Because apart from the hand movement or your hand going to the clock which is beside you, or the timer which is beside, so not the clock, the timer beside you, there is no physical movement in chess. But is it a sport? And this debate still goes on. So don't think that there is a final conclusion to this debate. For me as an individual, and I'm sure when you read about it later, and do read about it, you can have your own perception about it. But for me as an individual, chess is definitely a sport, because physical activity does not only mean that what is happening while the game is going on. If you see the regime of chess players who play chess, you should see what kind of physical regime they have. And it's parallel to, if not better, but parallel to what a cricketer does on the field, or a cricketer does in a training program, or a footballer does in a training program. Again, for Formula One, there's a very famous case of the Delhi High Court in this. People said that when Formula One came to India, I think in 2012 or 11, I'm not very sure about it, the particular year. It happened in the Buddh International Circuit in Noida. And there was a tax problem coming in, because people said that Formula One, for the, there was a petition that was filed that Formula One, for the party who has filed the petition, said that Formula One for us is not a sport. It has nothing to do with sports. It's all about entertainment, because of the reason that there is no, it does not depend on the driver if he or she is going to win the race. It depends on what kind of car you have. So that's why, a Williams will never, which is a Formula One team, is not winning, but a Ferrari is winning every day because they've got a better car. And Williams does not have a better car. So they say it has nothing to do with the driver. All it has to do is with the car and the engineers who are doing it. But it was struck down by the court, the Delhi High Court, and they said that you should go and see, for 72 laps, a person is sitting in a coffin, just like a coffin, because if a major accident happens, it's very, very fatal. And people are, giving their lives to it. Young kids are coming and giving their lives to it. There's a very famous Netflix series, I'm not very sure if everybody has watched it, called Formula One Drive to Survive. Watch that series, you'll understand what kind of physical labor or what kind of physical activity a Formula One driver does for each race. They're taken to these isolated mountain places and mountains in Europe and all, and then they're put inside gym, inside very, very tough conditions, so that for 72 laps or 70 laps, whatever, when they're racing, they don't crack down. So for me, chess, even if it's darts, even if it's Formula One, is a sport. And that's why, the whole debate of the traditional aspect of sports and the new aspect of sports came into being. And there's a small link in at the last, which is the National Sports and Recreation Act of 1998 of South Africa. And this is one of the first acts which said that for a game to become a sport, it's not only about the physical activity, it's also about the mental exertion that you have. So when you open this link, whenever you do, you'll see the word mental activity. So for me now, a sport has to be competitive, a sport has to be organized, and there has to be a physical and mental activity present for a game to become sport. We'll go to the next slide, Abhinav. Yeah. And the best definition in terms of the Indian perspective was given by Justice Mukul Mudgal and Vidushpat Singhania, and they defined what sport is. I'll just give you a small intro about Justice Mudgal and Vidushpat. Justice Mukul Mudgal was the former Chief Justice of the Punjab and Haryana High Court. He was also the chairman of the Mudgal Committee. I don't know if everybody has heard about it. On IPL, when the IPL probe happened, the Mudgal Committee came in, and they were the one who put down a thing called Mudgal report. They do read about the Mudgal.
Tarun,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
Can I just interfere for a minute?
Yeah, please.
Shishti ma'am, our Honorable Vice Chancellor sir is here.
Oh, good afternoon, sir.
Please continue. I don't want to interrupt in between. I am sorry. So sorry. Please continue. No,
Sir.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon. Good afternoon, Professor Chauhan.
Very good afternoon, Mr. Tarun Singh.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming.
I have come only to say thank you. Instead, I was supposed to welcome you today, because, but sorry, my webinar. I was busy in another webinar.
Yeah.
I was a guest there.
No problem, sir. No problem. Thank you for coming.
30. So I welcome you on behalf of the university.
Thank you, sir.
I am sorry for the interruption.
No problem, sir. There's no problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. Yeah. So about Justice Mudgal and Vidushpat Singhania. So Justice Mudgal, as I said, was the Chief Justice of the Punjab and Haryana High Court. He was the chairman of the Mudgal Committee. Do read about the Mudgal Committee and the Mudgal report. It talks about the whole IPL probe that happened because of the whole, a huge corruption scam that was happening. And Vidushpat Singhania is also a very famous sports lawyer of the country. He's written a book. They've got a book called Sports and Law in Sports. I'll request the university to get a copy of it. There are 2 volumes of it, 1 and 2. You can get both of them. It's a very, very essential book to have in the library. And also Vidushpat Singhania is the founder of a firm called Krida Legal. We'll talk about Krida Legal later. And for me, it's a very proud moment to actually introduce him, because he's also the alumni of the same college. He's also the Montfort pass out. So he's my senior in terms of that. I think the PPT just went out. It's okay. I don't know if can.
Just a second, sir. We are checking for it. It's just a second.
uh, it has become, a scripted activity. So non-scripted activity means that you don't know what is going to happen in the end. But, corruption, things like match fixing, things like match fixing and sport fixing have come in, which has made sport scripted. So non-scripted activity is the first thing. The second thing is that it involves human beings. So, there can be a horse, for horse racing, or there are other sports that happen through animals. They can happen, but human beings have to be there. A jockey will be sitting on the back of the horse to command the horse in a horse racing match. So it should involve human beings. The third is it requires, very important, it requires both mental and physical exertion. So chess, for that matter, is a sport according to them, also according to me as well. Then there has to be, a specific goal that one wants to achieve. For example, the cricket World Cup, you want to win the World Cup. The football World Cup, you want to win the World Cup. Maybe a lot of teams, at a point of time, like in Test cricket, it generally happens. Your specific aim after 2-3 days of seeing how the match is going on, your specific aim becomes drawing the match. So that also can be a specific aim. There's no problem with that. Then, it is these are the four things. The fifth thing is that it is done under a supervision of a pre-assigned person. These pre-assigned persons can be your coaches, your administrators. When a match is going on, these pre-assigned persons are the referees, the technical referees, and so on and so forth. So you've got a bunch of referees who are pre-assigned people to take care of how a sport is going to go forward. The next, it is governed by a set of rules and regulations. So for football, you have FIFA, which will give you the FIFA rules. For cricket, you've got the BCCI, which is going to take care of it. I think it's going to be on the Mudgal slide. Perfect. So governed by set of, the second last point for everybody, governed by set of rules. So football, you've got the FIFA rules. For cricket, you've got the BCCI, who gives you a lot of rules and regulations, how a sport is going to go. For boxing, you have the World Boxing Federation, and so on and so forth. And the last one, which is very important, which has a legal aspect attached to it, is in conformity with public morality. And a very famous case, which you can read later, is the Jallikattu case. So what happened in the Jallikattu case, and there was another case, I'll tell you about it as well. What happened in the Jallikattu case was that, in the southern part of India, there is this tradition that happens where bulls are used. And the whole tradition is called Jallikattu. And there was a petition that was filed against it, saying that it's animal cruelty and you can't do it. But a lot of people said that it's under our tradition. It has been a sport since generations, and you can't stop us from doing that. But the court in this matter said that nothing doing. Jallikattu can be your tradition, can be anything, but it's against public morality. It's against animal rights. It's an animal right violation. You cannot do it. So you can't call it saying that it's a sport and it can happen. Your tradition, is safe and secure. But as in terms of sport, it's definitely not a sport. There's another case. I forgot the citation of the case, but it's called the Dahi Handi case. So if you give a Google search on Dahi Handi case, there is a Delhi High Court, and I think a Bombay High Court, not a Delhi High Court, a Bombay High Court judgment on it. So everybody, I'm sure people, who come from Maharashtra or other areas, there's this thing called Dahi Handi, which happens, I think in a specific, at a specific time of the year. And what used to happen, it was unregulated. So there was a petition filed in the Bombay High Court saying that people are saying that it's a sport, and under the whole ambit of sport, they are doing something which is absolutely dangerous for people who are in that whole process. So the Bombay High Court came with a specific guidelines saying that no children, number one, can be used, no minor, not children, no minor can be used, in a Dahi Handi competition. Secondly, the pyramid that they make to burst the handi up there, it cannot be more than 20 feet. If anything goes above 20 feet, it's a disqualification. People who are doing it can be taken to jail, and penal actions can be taken against them. So in one sport, a particular sport has to be in public conformity. There are a number of other cases, a number of PILs, which have been filed, which come within the ambit of sports law. Please go, through these PIL. If you want to, you can connect with me. I can send you links and you can read about it. We'll go to the next slide, Abhinav. Perfect. Now, I hope, I'm not very sure, but I hope all of you have understood the whole concept of play, game, and sport. So play is a mental capacity. A game has four things that one has to take care of it. It has to be competitive, chance, there has to be, a vertigo attached to it, and, mimicry that is happening. And then you get back into the next part of it, which is sport. So, it has to be non-scripted, involves human beings, mental and physical exertion has to be there. You want to achieve a specific goal, supervision of a pre-assigned person, governed by a set of rules and in conformity with public morality. So that is how this evolution has happened. And it's very essential to understand this evolution, because if you don't understand it, you will not understand the whole crux of what sport is. And if you don't understand the crux of sport and what goes into sport, there are a lot of legal matters that you might not be able to take care of properly after a number of and then you have to go back to the basics and understand. So it's very important that you understand it right away. The PPTs will be with you. Please read about them in detail. And now this was majorly a general analysis of what gameplay and sports are. But a very essential part of it is that how sport became modern sport, and what is the difference between sports and modern sports. And I'll give you an example. So anybody who reads about sport, when the Olympics started way back, I think in 7th century or 2nd century, I don't remember the exact century when it started. It wasn't done for competition. It wasn't. So the basic reason why the Olympics started was that they used to pray the Greek gods at that point of time, specifically Zeus. So Zeus is one of the gods that Hercules and Zeus were two gods that they generally used to pray at that point of time through the Olympics. It had nothing to do with competition. There were athletes who used to come in and participate, but they were not competing, with each other. They were just there to take the blessings of Zeus and show what kind of power they're made up of. And that was the essential part of it. But Alan Gutman, when you see this slide, Alan Gutman is a very famous American author. He wrote this book called From Rituals to Record. You can get this book. It's a very, very, very cheap book, which one can buy. I think it's of 250 rupees or something. And read this book. It is a very, very essential and important reading for everybody who wants to understand how sports changed to modern sport. And Alan Gutman gave 7 reasons why a particular thing, which was sport, changed into modern sport. And the first thing, which is essential, which changed everything, and this all happened in 19th century, by the way. And just to give everybody, a sense of history, what was happening in the late 18th century, 19th century, was the Industrial Revolution. And because of Industrial Revolution, which touched every part of the society, it touched sport also. Because now things were becoming commercial in aspect. There was money coming in every sector, and sports was not alien to it. And that is when, Alan Gutman said that a sport changed to modern sport in the 19th century. And he said because of 7 reasons it happened. It happened, number one, and how it happened, there were 7 reasons behind it. Number one, secularism came in. Through secularism, what he meant was that, first it was all about Zeus and Hercules, but now it was not about that. It was now about competition. It was A versus B, and both A and B will fight to win. Yeah. So secularism came in. Equality came in, though I still don't believe that sports or any sector of the society is equal, to 100%. But yeah, equality came in because I'll give you an example. So cricket was always called the gentleman's game. Only, particular class of people were allowed to play that game or used to play that game. Boxing, which is very famous in places like Cuba and Russia and Ukraine, boxing was generally done by slaves because it was a very, very hard sport. So a lot of businessmen used to put money on slaves. They used to put them inside the ring to win a lot of money. But now this did not happen. All of this has changed now. So a boxer, you can be a boxer, you can be, a crorepati, or you can be somebody from a very humble background. But at the time when you're inside the ring, nobody's going to ask you about your commercial status or your status in the society. It's again what's A versus B, and it's equal for everybody to fight. So equality came in. Then he said that specialization came in. And I've given an example of specialization called, and I said Calcio Ferrantini was to football. So Calcio Ferrantini is an Italian sport. It's not a sport, it's a tradition in Italy. And it's just like football. So what happens in Calcio Ferrantini is that there are there can be, I think, more than 25 people in a team. And you have to stop one team from scoring against you. But while that is happening, you are free to use whatever ways you want to stop them, you can use anyway. This means that you can punch the person, you can kick the person, you can, give a choke slam to the person and just stop that person from scoring. But that did not happen in football. Football has set aside, you've got rules. These are things that you can do. These are the ways you can stop a person. You can't cross those limits. If you cross those limits, there can be excessive fines on you. You can be stopped from playing football. And there have been a number of examples. A referee can give you a yellow card or a red card, and it can be career ending for you. So now, this specialization came in. The next one is rationalization. Rules book came in. So for example, when I spoke of the FIFA rules, or we spoke about the BCCI rules, or we spoke about the ICC rules, rule book came in and sport became rationalized. The next one is bureaucracy. With bureaucracy is what I meant that associations came in. So for example, National Basketball Association came in to check the American basketball scene. The FIFA came in, the ICC came in, the BCCI came in, and federations and association at state and national levels came in. So bureaucracy came in, which gave a structural hierarchy to sport, that this is how a particular sport will be managed. Then quantification came in. We never used to quantify things. So I'll give you another example of what used to happen in the early Olympics. What used to happen in early Olympics is that if there is a throw competition, for example, if there's a discus throw, I as an individual can come and throw a 10-kilo ring, and the other person need not take the 10-kilo ring and throw it again. He or she can also throw 2 kilo, because there was no competition. You just have to show your strength. You're not getting anything out of it. You're just showing your strength, because it's all about Zeus and it's all about Hercules. But now this did not happen. They said that there have to be particular categories made. For example, in boxing, you've got a lightweight boxer, a medium weight boxer, and a heavyweight boxer. Wrestling, same, lightweight, heavyweight, and medium weight. So quantification started happening. And the last point, which is very important, is records. So for example, you started recording now. Usain Bolt, everybody started calling him Thunderbolt when he won in the Olympics. He set the world record of running the quickest 100-meter. So these records started happening, which wasn't happening before. So these 7 points is what Alan Gutman said came into sport, and it changed sport to modern sport. All right, we'll go to the next slide, Abhinav. Yeah, again, very important concept which one should understand. Unicentric and multicentric sports systems. A unicentric sports system is, I will not say India is now a unicentric sports system, but majorly it is still now. Unicentric sports system means, your system promotes or gets an opportunity, a particular sports get an opportunity to be in the limelight. So for example, in India, it's cricket. So India, that way, is a unicentric sports system. Multicentric sports system is the United States of America or China, where, in USA, you've got the basketball, you've got football, the American soccer, football, American football, soccer, all of them in the same categories, same kind of fan following. People love to watch these games, and people play majorly all of these sports across. In India, you will not have somebody who wants to go to play, football really quick. Now it has improved because of the ISL coming in and other things. But majorly people will go for cricket because of its commercial, the status which cricket has in this country. So that's the difference between unicentric and multicentric sports system. Major sports are considered to be sports which are football and cricket and hockey, and minor sports are things like ping pong, which is table tennis or badminton, and so on and so forth. Now, the impact of globalization, how globalization came into sport and how things changed. So for example, like when the Britishers came to India, they brought cricket with them. So that is how, because of globalization, that wasn't because of globalization, that was majorly because of colonization. But because things became global and people said that it's a boundaryless world, things started coming from one sport to the other, one country to another country. So cricket is an example. If you go and check the history of Colombia or Spain, bullfight came into these countries because Spain was somebody who used to rule them for a particular particular point of time in the world, particular time in history. And that's why these things came to Colombia or to any other place where Spain went. So bullfighting came there. And these are all, examples of how globalization impacted. You can, read about it. There are beautiful books written on it, that how sport became boundaryless and it came to different countries. We'll go to the next slide, Abhinav. Yeah. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Yeah. Now, with this modernization of sports and people and things changing in the world, it gave rise to 3-4 very important international bodies. We're just going to scroll through these bodies. I think, we are also short on time. And we are going to talk about specifically about 4 bodies. The first being the International Olympic Committee. So, you can read about the International Olympic Committee on its website. I've given all the links. These links, just to give a, specific disclaimer to all of you, these links can be a little old, though I'm 99% sure that they're not. Just click on them, you'll go to the specific page and you can get all the information about it. So the International Olympic Committee, which is in Lausanne, Switzerland, came into being, just to promote sports and bring harmony or get countries together through the medium of sports. And there are 4 or 5 things that one should understand in the International Olympic Committee. One is the Olympic movement, which consists of 3 things. Number 1 is the IOC, which is the International Olympic Committee itself. The International Federation, that can be FIFA, cricket does not come under it. FIFA comes under it. You've got the World Equestrian Association, which is all about the water sport and all. And then you've got the National Olympic Committees under it. You've got the Indian Olympic Association, which is a part of the Olympic movement. Olympic Charter, every now and then they revise this charter, and the Olympic Charter is just like the Constitution. It tells all the member states, not the members, all the National Olympic Committees and the countries who have signed the Olympic Charter, that how Olympic sport will be conducted, or what are these rules and regulations by which a country will conduct Olympic sports if the Olympics comes to that country, or if you want to participate in Olympics, how a particular athlete coming from your country has to behave. So the Olympic Charter is just the Grundnorm. It's a constitution which everybody has to follow who is a signatory to the Olympic Charter. Members, which is very, very important to understand. I'll give you this can be very surprising for everybody, and I was also surprised when I got to know about it. Please note this, that no country is a member of the International Olympic Committee. Anybody who tells you that India is a member of the International Olympic Committee, they're wrong. They're misunderstood the whole concept. There is no country that is part of the International Olympic Committee. You've got national Olympic committees which are registered under the International Olympic Committee, but that does not mean that you're a member of it. So if somebody tells you that India is a member of the International Olympic Committee, that's not the case. Countries cannot be members of the International Olympic Committees. And also one more thing, which is one has to understand. I'll give you an Indian example only. Miss Neeta Ambani is in the International Olympic Committee. She's the member of the International Olympic Committee. That does not mean that she is the Indian representative of the Indian representative at the International Olympic Committee. It's the other way around. She is the International Olympic Committee representative in India. So be very, very clear about it. There is no individual from a country, if he or she has gone to the International Olympic Committee, they are not representatives of that country. They are the representatives of the International Olympic Committee in that country. So if you have any problem regarding the Olympic Committee, you can go to Neeta Ambani saying that this is something that we want your body, which is the International Olympic Committee, to consider. And she can take that forward to the International Olympic Committee. So be very clear about it. You've got national associations which are registered under the International Olympic Committee, but no country is a member of the International Olympic Committee, which is very important to understand. Right. The last point is the National Olympic Committee. You've got, in New Delhi, I think it came into being in 1964, if I'm not wrong. And Mr. Narendra is the head of it. He's also the member of the International Olympic Committee again. Just for clarification, he's the representative of the International Olympic Committee in India. And this is what the Olympic, you can check these links. You will get to understand how the International Olympic Committee functions. We'll go to the next slide, Abhinav. The United Nations. I won't go into the history of United Nations. If anybody who does not know how the United Nations came into being, which is absolutely okay, not everything should be known, but now read about it. The United Nations has done a lot of things to promote sport all around the globe. So there are 4 or 5 things that I've mentioned in this PPT, in this slide. Do read about these. These are international conventions. They also talk about what India has done or what India is part of in terms of the international covenants. It also talks about the International Year of Sport and Physical Education. This was 2005. Kofi Annan, who was then Secretary General of the United Nations, introduced this concept. In India, you've got the National Sports Day, which is 29th of August, which is the birthday of the great, hockey player from India, Major Dhyan Chand. So, you can read about these things. I've mentioned everything in this PPT. You can click on these links and you can read about it. Any problem about all of this, please feel free to write to me or call me and I can explain you. We'll go to the next slide, Abhinav. Interpol. A lot of people have this notion that what international police is doing in sports, and Interpol has a major role to play in sports. It has got surprisingly for everybody, it has got a separate sports integrity unit. And now India also has a CBI also has a sports integrity unit. Please read about it. They do very good work. So what the sports integrity unit of Interpol generally does is that, I'll give you an example, cricket fans specifically. As the international sports court, in layman language. And what happens in the code of arbitration for sport is, I think it's coming back. Perfect. I mean, can you go to the CAS, the next slide? Yeah, perfect. The code of arbitration for sport. So in 1981, CAS came into being, which is called the Court of Arbitration for Sport. And the two people, Keba Mumbai and Sarmancha, two people, they were international they were International Court of Justice judges who stepped forward and said that there has to be a court which should be specifically for sports governance. And the reason why it happened was, I'll give you the reason also. You can go to the CAS website and read the whole history of CAS. I'll just give you a brief idea about what happened. So for Tour de France, which is a very famous cycle race that happens in France, is a very famous sport that happens every year. And in 1979 season and 80 season, before the CAS came into being, I think 79 and 78 season, there were a lot of doping that was happening in the Tour de France. And unfortunately, this was an organized doping scam. And there were teams which were putting, so when the Tour de France is happening, every team has their own cars which are running, apart from the cyclists who are competing. For just to take care of these cyclists, you've got a car which is running with them. If you need water or any kind of medication at a particular point of time, you have got these people in the car who are there to help you. Unfortunately, at that point of time, these people were there in the car to help them, but not only with medication and with water, but also with dope. There were cars which were stopped at various barriers. When the Tour de France were going on, and there were kilos and kilos of cocaine and other drugs which were found in these cars, and which raised a lot of eyebrows all around the world. They said that this cannot happen in sports. And if this is happening in sports, there has to be something that has to be done about it. And because of this case, which is known as the foundation of why CAS came into being, they said that there has to be an international sports court that has to be developed, and it happened in 1981. CAS came into being. But at that point of time, CAS was majorly governed by the International Olympic Committee. And again, a problem came in. Now people started saying that if the International Olympic Committee is going to take care of CAS, what is going to happen if some athlete wants to take the IOC, to CAS and, want to sue them? And this happened in the Elmar Gundel case. I've already mentioned, you can read about the case on the CAS website, but I'll just give you a brief about it. Elmar Gundel is a very famous international jockey. He was banned by the IOC, saying by the the International Equestrian Board, saying that you're into drugs, and they banned him for two years, if I'm not wrong. He went to the body which was formed by the International Equestrian Committee, and they said that it's absolutely fine. There is no problem with the sanction that you've got. You are banned for 2 years. He then went to the International Olympic Committee saying that this cannot be done. It's wrong. They cannot stop me from playing. The International Olympic Committee said that, all right, it's not a 2-year ban, it's a 2-month ban, but there is a ban. He was still unhappy with it. And he went straight away to CAS saying that, I want to sue the International Olympic Committee for stopping me from playing. But unfortunately, at that point of time, people said that, all right, you're going to the CAS, you can go to the CAS. But the members of the CAS are appointed by the International Olympic Committee. Are you dreaming that you're going to get, some kind of redressal from CAS? And which brought to the CAS reforms in 1994 when the case happened. They said that CAS has to be an international, it has to be an independent body, and IOC has to be taken out of it. And there are a number of CAS reforms that happen, I've already mentioned. Please don't, get scared about what happened and all. When you read arbitration, I think when you go to third year or fourth year or fifth year, you will understand all of this. But you can go to the CAS website and read about all of this whenever you like. And then you will go to the next slide, Abhinav. Yeah. And these are 2-3 things, very basic things that you can remember about CAS initially. Number one, it was got 4 procedures. One is the ordinary procedure. You straight away take the case to CAS. Second is the appeals. There is an international committee that has been formed to take care of your case. You're not happy with the judgment of that case. It can be the International Olympic Committee or any other committee. You take it to the appeal to CAS. Another one is advisory jurisdiction. International Olympic Committee or any other international body can go to CAS and say that we want your advice on this. They will give you an advice about a particular thing. So it's called the advisory. And then mediation is again another part of it. You'll read about arbitration, mediation, and conciliation when you get to the next years. Nothing very specific. They've got offices in Sydney, New York. Every Olympic village has a CAS office whenever the Olympic is going on. For those 14, 15, 20 days, whenever the Olympic is going on, you have a CAS board sitting inside the Olympic Committee. FIFA has its own CAS body, which takes care of it. Any UEFA tournament, which is the UEFA Champions League, whenever it's happening, you have a CAS body sitting for that particular point of time, so that immediate redressal can be given. You can straight away after the match take the first people to the court saying that they've stopped me from playing a particular game, they've banned me for something that I've not done, and the redressal can be given at that particular point of time. We'll go to the next slide, Abhinav. Perfect. So this is, this was all about what very, very basic. It's not even the basic. It's not even the tip of the iceberg. It's somewhere which we discuss right now. But this whole session is majorly about your career prospects. So we are going to get into those career prospects. But before we get into the career prospect, there are specific things that one has to understand, and these are these do's and don'ts, which you should, as a first year and second year student, keep in mind while you think of sports law as a career option. Number one is regular reading, which I think a lot of all your professors who are joining this session will tell you, because we never did it. I'll raise my hand and say I'm not a very ardent reader, was an ardent reader, but through tough times I've learned to do it. I would request you not to go through those tough times and start reading right away. If you want to do something in sports law, you have to read about sports law. And when I say sports law, don't think that sports law is something which has an individual character attached to it. Of course it has. There are things which does not happen in every other law, but happens in the domain of sports. But sports law is a mixture of every law. You've got sports contracts. So if you want to get into sports contracts, or you want to help a player with his or her contract, you need to know the basics of contract. You need to know how a contract functions, whether it's a sports contract, whether it's a real estate contract, whether it's a general marriage contract, so on and so forth. You have to know what contract law is, what labor laws are, what international law is, what human rights law is. So it's not only about reading about sports or sports law, it's also about reading about law in general, because sports law is a combination of everything. So don't stop yourself from saying that I just know sports contracts, but I have no clue about how contracts function. If you're going to tell this to your client, be ready for a very, very hard time for yourself, because then it's not going to happen. So read. And I've mentioned in this slide, a few areas, a few places where you can go and read about it. First is law in sports. Law in sports, for me and for everybody who is into sports law, is the best website to check how sports law functions in the world. So you can, it has got a free access to it. There is a paid access of 13,500 rupees a year, which gives you a lot of material. They give you courses as well. You get everything that is happening in sports law, sports management, not in sports, but sports law and sports management. Everything that is happening around the world, you will get it on law and sports. Brilliant website to check. please go and read about whatever you want to read about sports law, on law and sports. The second one is sports business, which is majorly about, sports as a business and the commercial aspect of sports, but do read it. It's good for, for people who want to go into sports management. The third is inside sports, which is India centric. So a lot of things that are happening in the Indian sports business, you get to know about it on, in inside sports. But, the second part of it is that, all right, good, you're reading, but what are you giving out of it? What are you gaining out of it? You're gaining knowledge out of it. You're gaining a number of things, but it's not, it's not healthy to keep everything trapped. You have knowledge. What do you want to do with it? You have to write, write as much as you can. Write about the legal issues, write about management issues in sports, any contemporary issue that has come in, you've read it on, in the newspaper, just pick your laptop and, start typing, start writing what you think about it. Right or wrong is very, very subjective. Everybody knows about it. You can have a perception about something, just put it on paper. It's somebody else who's a reviewer. He or she will decide if if that paper deserves to be, or if that piece deserves to go for public reading or not. But you write, and start with journal writing. A lot of people, what I've seen right now is that a lot of people go for blog writing. I don't say it's wrong. I myself write them. It's not a bad thing to do it, but just don't make a habit of only blog writing. Start writing in journals. It's very important. Somebody who wants to go into academics, with like a person like me, if you don't do journal writing, it's not going to help you, because, at the end of the day, if you've got good publications and very, very good journals, that is going to help you. So write in journals, write in blogs, newspapers, magazines, but all of this comes really late. Specifically start writing for journals. Good papers, write 3,000 words or 2,500 words in the beginning. Good for you, but it should be a well thought out, well researched paper. The GNLU Centre for Sports and Entertainment Law has its own journal. If you want to write for it, the call for papers for the next volume is going to come out really, really soon. You can write for it. We'll be happy to publish it, keeping in view the quality of it. I think Jindal Global has its own journal. Nual's Kochi has its own journal on sports law. The National Law University in Assam has its own journal. Blogs, a number of blogs in India and internationally, you have, who publish work in sports law and sports management. You can, contact me, or you can just do a normal Google search and you'll find ample amount of areas where you can write, ample amount of, places where you can write. But write, it's very essential, because if you don't write, you cannot put through your thought process. You can be a very good reader, but if you don't write in this business, it doesn't help. And it gives you a lot of recognition. Law and sports, you can even write for law and sports. It has its own blog. And I'm telling you, I've got to know about a lot of people through that website only. People who write, they're big names in sports law. And if you get a publication in law and sports, that means that, you are on the right track. So you can write for law and sports as well. I think somebody in the beginning asked me about the internship procedure. Get the right internship if you want to be into sports law. And when I mean right internship, that does not mean that you have to go for, Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas or, Sam or Cam or Khaitan. Because unfortunately, these people don't do sports law work. I don't know if they do now, but as per my knowledge, they don't. So you have to focus yourself to sports law firms. And I'm going to have a slide for sports law firm where you can apply for internships and all. And how this internships help. Of course, they help, you generally in terms of, your CV. You get to learn how the business functions and how, sports law is practiced in India and internationally. But the most important aspect of these internships is networking. You get to get into a there are not a lot of them, but they're looking for, I can tell you the inside story. They're looking for good interns. They're looking for people who want to learn, who want to deliver. So apply to these places whenever you get the next opportunity to apply. I think because of COVID now, they've also started giving online internships. So please write to them. If you get an online internship, very, very good for you. The next one is, get the gyan about sports law from wherever you can. And I've mentioned, sometimes it's not free, but that's absolutely okay. You have to sometimes pay for it, but pay for it. A movie less in a month or a date less in a month, you can put that money for your, credit courses, for your certificate courses, though you get free courses as well in a lot of websites. GNLU, NUJS provides it. Enhalian, which I've spoken about in the beginning, gives you a sports law diploma as well. Coursera is something you can go. FIFA has its own channel on YouTube. You can go and read, watch these videos. Brilliant content they give you. Athlete 365, which I've mentioned, is the education system of the International Olympic Committee. I've done a number of courses from there. They are very good courses. You will stand out if you do it properly. If you get the information what they're giving you, you will stand out when you talk about sports law, because it's very, very good. So please, go and enroll yourself for these courses. Networking, I've already mentioned. Go for symposiums, go for conferences, etc. Please don't stop yourself. There's a think tank called the Sports Law Policy Center in Bangalore. Their symposium starts tomorrow. I think the deadline for registration is over now, but you will get you'll get all the information on YouTube. They're going to put it. You can read about SLPC on Google. I shouldn't do it because they're kind of competitive think tank just like us, but a brilliant center to work with. You get internships as a SLPC, so you can apply there as well. Nandan Kamath, who's the celebrated lawyer, sports lawyer in the country, is the founder of SLPC. I'll talk about Nandan Kamath in the next slide. The last point is is very, very important in this slide, which says that I love sports. Good for you if you love it, but that does not mean that you love sports law as well. So anybody who thinks that, you have to be a sports player or you have to be a sports lover to do sports law, just take that thing outside your head. It has nothing to do with it. Don't think that a sports lawyer has a very fancy life, that you're going to go and chill with Sachin Tendulkar or Cristiano Ronaldo or Michael Jordan and so on and so forth. If you're lucky, you might meet these people. But I know a lot of sports lawyers who have never met an athlete they're representing ever in their life. But because of the reason that at the end of the day, it's about law. It's about giving legal services to these people, not about partying with them. And I'm not talking about the Indian structure. I'm also talking about the international structure. In international structure, also I know people who have worked for FIFA. They haven't seen an international player ever in their life. They've seen them in matches and all, but they haven't gone and chilled with them or had a beer with them or so on and so forth, or had dinners with them. So you can, if you love sports, if you don't love sport, has nothing to do, with becoming a sports lawyer. For becoming a sports lawyer, you need to know what sports law is and not what sports is. You know sports, good for you. If you don't know, but if you only know sports and not how sports law functions, you'll have a tough time. We'll go to the next slide, Abhinav. I'll just have a sip of water. Perfect. About careers and scope. So, all of this is generally divided into 4 parts. It's actually divided into 2, but I've made it into 4 so for clarity. The second, third, and fourth come within the same ambit, but I'll tell you how they're different. The first is, you can work for sports law firms, and I have made particular slides for each of these. The second is that you can become an in-house counsel for a particular company, for a particular sports management company, or for a particular company which which has some role in the sports industry. The third is legal counsel with leagues and league teams, and the fourth is that you're a legal counsel with the sports federation or association. Abhinav, we'll go to the next slide. I'll explain all of this one by one. Yeah. So sports law firms, and I've mentioned this, these are very basic lists. These are generally Indian centric. Internationally, you have a lot of them, but I'll just tell you these 4 or 5 places where you can apply for your internships and think about getting a job. The first is Law NK, which is a very, very famous firm. For the first law firm, I think, in India, which is specific to sports law, called Law NK. It's in Bangalore. Nandan Kamath, I've mentioned about him before, is the founding trustee, is the principal associate of Law NK. NK stands for Nandan Kamath only. And he's also the founder of the Go Sports Foundation, which won the President Khel Protsahan Award recently. You can even apply to Go Sports Foundation for an internship. It's majorly a sports management company, not-for-profit organization which promote athletes, but it's a very good place to learn. They also run the Sports Law and Policy Center in Bangalore, and this all comes within Law NK. So you can apply to Law NK and you get a legal internship there, you can get a management internship there, you can get a research internship there. I will push all of you to go for a research internship as well to understand how it happens. SLPC gives you internships. Do apply to it. And you will get all the information on their website how to apply. It's very basic, but they look for quality. The second firm that you can apply to is Krida Legal, New Delhi. Vidushpat Singhani, I mentioned about him before. He's one of the writers of the sports and law book. Krida Legal is the name of the firm. Brilliant place to work. They take a lot of newcomers, so it's good for people who want to, who think that we want to immediately go for sports law as a career option. You can go to Krida Legal and you can get an internship or a placement there. Game Changers Law again is a Bangalore firm. Amrut Joshi is the founder of Game Changers Law. Another firm generally works, on online gaming and all. Before they used to work, now they've opened their ambit. So you can go to Game Changers Law as well. They've got an office in Bangalore. They've got another office in Delhi, and Aditya Shamlal is the name of the person who takes care of their Delhi office. Game Changers Law is another firm. AM Sports Law and Management is Anna Mehrotra's firm. Anna Mehrotra is a very celebrated sports lawyer, a very, very good lawyer, and a hard taskmaster is what I've heard. But you can go and apply to AM Sports Law and Management. They've got two offices, one in New Delhi and one in Mumbai. And you can apply for internships. All the information I checked in the morning is given on their website. Please go ahead and apply. I'm sure you will crack it. It's not a very huge deal. Off the Bench is another new law firm which has come in. It's again in Bangalore, and Srinivasan Samyani is the founder of it. He's a FIFA Masters pass out. He used to work with the AIFF before coming to Off the Bench, before founding Off the Bench. So these are these 4 or 5 firms that you can apply for internships. They've got their own requirements like 9K will ask you to put down a paper for them before you apply to the internship. They'll ask you to show that your writings on sports law, and then they decide it. But I think for Krida Legal, Game Changers and all of that, such requirements are not there. So you can easily apply to these places. I'm sure you'll crack internships here. We'll go to the next slide, Abhinav. Excuse me. In-house counsel. So places like Dream 11, Star, sports management companies can hire you or give you internships. And all of them have their own, placement and internship cell. I will request the internship and placement cell of GNLU to directly go to them and talk about it. And they're really happy to give internships to, young people who are coming in, and specifically places like Dream 11, which is fantasy sports. So you can apply to these places. Star again gives you an amazing internship opportunity. Sports management companies, there are a number of them in Bangalore, Bombay, Delhi, I think in Chennai as well, Hyderabad. So you can apply to these places for an internship, and if you crack it well, you can become an in-house counsel for them. We'll go to the next slide. Some people have their domestic things going on. Anyways, the next is legal. I don't know why the heading is not coming. So it's legal councils with leagues, federation, and association. So you can, apply for an internships. I'm not very sure, but you can definitely apply to places like, the ISL, the Indian Soccer League, the IPL, or maybe to lawyers who represent them. And you could, Rajasthan Royals, for example, was represented by a person called Anish Dayal, who's a very famous Supreme Court lawyer. Very, very good person to work with. He's a Cambridge graduate, a very well-known sports lawyer of the country. So, you can apply to them as well, who have individual practices in high courts and Supreme Courts, but also represent these domestic leagues or teams which are participating in them. BCCI gives you internships and placement opportunities. I forgot her name. Today morning, I was talking to her. She is a legal advisor. You can find them in LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very good place to, search for all of this. So, it will be good for you that you initially, in the first and second years, you get a LinkedIn account. It's free of cost for their basic features and all. And you can, network with a lot of people there. And let me tell you, with my personal experience, people in sports law and sports industry are very friendly. So you can write to them and they will respond to you. They can be very big names, but they're very courteous that way, is what I've seen specifically in sports law. I don't know about other legal fields or people, in other fields, but sports lawyers and, people into sports law and management are very courteous people. They will immediately reply you with a yes or a no. AIFF, the All India Football Federation, gives you internships opportunity. They've even got their own in-house counsels who work for the AIFF. Sports Authority of India gives you, I don't know why I haven't mentioned. Sports Authority of India has their own, placement and internship cell. You can apply for the, internships there and get a placement. I have people who work there. Brilliant work. You get a lot of new things to learn on contracts, on labor issues and all, and you can apply to these places. We'll go to the next slide. I don't know if there is a next slide. Yeah. So if any of you thinks that, we have done our law, and we love sports law, but, to get into the whole business, first I want to explore or do a master's in that, like how I am doing. These are the places that you can apply for. There's something called the FIFA Masters, one of the most renowned programs. And it's a brilliant experience, a 1-year program. I think you need a work ex for it of 2 years or 3 years. Please check their website and you can apply for FIFA Master. It's a brilliant program. The FIFA, the International Football Association, runs it, and top lawyers in the country, internationally and nationally, have done, are from FIFA Master. So it gives you a brilliant edge over other people. Montfort University is where I'm doing it from. But it has a pure online program. They don't call you on campus. I'm doing a distance learning master's, that is. Very, very prestigious, very famous, brilliant lawyers in India and international are from Montfort University. You can apply to it, of course, for FIFA Masters and Montfort and other places, you need a good amount of money, which is a very huge consideration for people. But Montfort University is not that expensive in terms of its master's program, because it's a pure distance learning program. You don't have to go there. You can do it from there. So it's affordable for people, who really want to do it. NTU is Nottingham Trent University. They have their own LLM in sports law. Very, very famous again. I know a few people who have done it on LinkedIn. You'll find them. If you want me to connect you with any of them, please feel free to write to me. Melbourne Law School in Australia gives you offers you a very, how should I put it? A very exhaustive sports law program. Jack Anderson was a very famous academics in sports law. He's a CAST member also. He was an arbitrator in CAST. Before that, is the head of the Melbourne Law School sports law program. You can read about it on the Melbourne Law School website. You'll get all the information there. Miami Law School again has its own sports law program. It's LLM in sports law. They also have an LLM in entertainment law, but we'll discuss about this later. Anybody who thinks that, I want to do a master's before getting into sports law, like I've thought, purely, you can apply to these places. All of these things which I've discussed in terms of master's program or internship is a very small list. There are a number of firms internationally, nationally, other programs, which offer you sports law or internships and placements in sports law. So you can, do a free Google search and you'll get it. If you want my help, please do it. Law in Sports, which I mentioned earlier, will give you all information about what is happening in the sports law, whether it's practice, internships, if you want to do if you want to have a master's in sports law, all the information is there on Law in Sports. You can go there, read about it. You can contact me or any other person who's in the field, and he or she, I'm sure, will help you. I think that's the end. This is all from my side. Thank you very much, everybody. It was a pleasure talking to all of you. I think there's a question that came in. Yeah. The question is, in the present times, there have always been a doubt over the legality of online fantasy games in India. These games also involves a substantial degree of skill, knowledge, and judgment. Can we get a clearer view on it? Good question. Whoever has asked it, I think Rishabh has asked it. So Rishabh, you're right. A lot of people say that fantasy sports is generally about a game of, chance. So if it's a game of chance, there are two divisions of it. If there is a game of chance, the gambling laws of a particular state, if there are, Goa has it, Sikkim has it, a lot of other places have it, it will be taken care by those gambling laws. But there's a Punjab and Haryana High Court judgment, if I'm not wrong, which says that fantasy sports is not only a game of chance, it's a game of skill as well. If, for example, if anybody has used Dream 11, it's not a matter of chance that you make your own team. You need to understand how a player is playing in that particular IPL season, or that particular match, or has been playing in that series, and accordingly you make your team. So it's not only about chance, it's also about your skill set, how you understand the rules of it, how you use your money to buy a player or put that player in your team, and how you win money. So for me, it's not only about a game of chance. It's very novel in the Indian circuit. People are trying to get into the understanding of it and how to go about it. There have been a number of articles written by very, very high profile people on fantasy sport. But for me, it's both a game of skill and a game of chance. I don't know if there is any other question. No, I don't think so. There is a question. Yeah, I'm done here.
The question that you want to ask?
I got a thank you from Rishabh.
Good morning, ma'am.
Most welcome, Rishabh.
Good morning, sir. Sir, it's my privilege to have been asked from my faculty members and the internship and placement cell to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion.
Yeah.
Sir, I behalf on the internship and placement cell extend a very hearty vote of thanks to you, sir, who blessed us with their presence and knowledge and took out valuable time from your sir busy schedule. Sir, I would also like to extend special thanks to our Vice Chancellor, sir, for his words and inspiring us. I especially liked your speech or your session where you mentioned how sports law emerges and the way you explained the topic exemplary. I also wish to express my gratitude to Ms. Srishti ma'am, who in coordinating with us has engaged this program and supported us. And also, no program can be successful without a single person. So I extend a big thanks to our participants. Thank you guys for making this this event a successful with your participation. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. I think there's a
words from your
question
side?
which came in. I'm really sorry to intervene in between. Somebody has sent a question, Prabal, which says that, yeah, what should a third year student focus on right now? It's not about the third year student. I think a lot of your faculties are also going to tell you the same thing. Right now, focus on what law generally is. What sports law is a different issue altogether. You can connect it with sports later, but be very specific about what law is, what are these things that happen in law, whether it's contract law, tort law, criminal law, civil law. Focus on those things right now. Don't focus on, I have to go for a specialization. You've got another year to for it. In fourth year, you can think about, or you in third year also, you can, you can streamline yourself to a particular area. But while streamline yourself, whilst you streamline yourself, don't forget about other laws, because as I mentioned, sports law is a combination of everything. It has its own specifications, of course, which are not applicable in any other aspect of life. But sports law, 90% or 85% of it is a combination of other laws. So as a third year or fourth year, fifth year, focus on understanding what law as a subject is what I'll tell you. Yeah. There's no other question.
I think Rishabh has already done my job of giving a vote of thanks here from all of our side. Tarun, just one last question which a lot of students ask us later is that if they want to contact you or if they want to, let's say, intern with your center in GNLU, what platform should be the way?
Any platform. Look, I am somebody who's not into those official things that you can only mail me and then I'll tell you. My WhatsApp on the slides, my WhatsApp number, my call-in numbers, my email IDs are there. Anybody, please feel free to contact me about any query. It can be the smallest of smallest and the biggest of biggest. Please be very, very, open about asking questions, and also there's no problem with that.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that if the situation improves, we'll have you on our campus for a credit course, whatever it is. And we'll see you around, and I'm sure a lot of our students would be mailing you and texting you about
I'm all there for any kind of help. Don't worry.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
For sparing time for us.
Thank you, Shruti ma'am. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Srishti ma'am, for coordinating. Thank you, sir. It's a privilege to have you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, students, I think we'll end the session now.